So here's a story I want to really talk about. I think it's really interesting because it's something that's going to affect me because I really love these games and especially on a platform where I actually prefer, and that is Sony PC games. And unfortunately, in the last few days, Sony has more or less announced that we're not doing PC games anymore. And Jason Schreier, he had an article. Let's read through it. But first, let's. Oh, here we go. We can just read this first. Sony no longer plans to release PlayStation games on PC. Sources tell Bloomberg News a major shift in strategy that sees the console maker returning to exclusivity after 6 years of flirting with multi-platform. Ghost of Yotei and Saros are not coming to PC, which is incredibly surprising to me, but we'll get into that. And not surprising to me, but we'll get into it. So shifting strategy from and from Matt Piscatella. So shifting strategy from market expansion and revenue growth to margin protection. Younger and less affluent players aren't going to leave their established games and low barrier of entry. Platforms and dedicated PC players will just play other things, but sure, higher margin on lower revenue. Um, okay, before I even get to that, let's just read the article because I agree with what he's saying, but we'll get into it. Sony pulls back on PlayStation games and PC. Sony Corp no longer plans to release. Is it not gonna load? Is it just done? Okay. Maybe if I go to like private. Okay, going on incognito for some reason works. Sony Corp Group no longer plans to release its big PlayStation 5 games on PC, a major shift in strategy that sees the video game marketer return to consoles and exclusivity of the 6 years of flirting with multi-platform releases, according to people familiar with the company's plans. Online games such as Marathon and Marvel Token will still be released across multiple platforms, but single-player titles such as last year's Samurai hit Ghost of Yotai and the upcoming game Saros will remain exclusive to PS5, and said the people who asked not to be identified because they were unauthorized to talk publicly about the company's strategy. The people cautioned that things could change in the future due to the predictable nature of video game industry and that Sony's plans are constantly shifting. But in recent weeks, PlayStation scrapped plans to bring Yotai and other internally developed games to PC. Two games made by external developers but published by PlayStation, Death Stranding 2 and Kena Scars Cosmora are coming to PC. A spokesperson for PlayStation denied the comment. There are likely a few reasons behind this shift. One is that several recent PlayStation games have not sold well on PC. A fraction within PlayStation has also expressed concern that releasing their games on PC risks damaging the console's brand and will hurt sales of the PlayStation 5 and successor. According to people familiar with Sony's inner workings for decades, Sony's tactic for selling PlayStation, when I say it like that, was to keep tentpole franchises exclusive to its own consoles. In 2020, it pivoted and began bringing games to personal computers via Steam. Since then, the company has put most of its biggest franchises on PC, such as God of War, Last of Us. But the strategy has been muddied and confused many players, but most PC releases arrive months or years after the game come to PlayStation. The candidates, come to PC rather than PlayStation. Okay, the cadence was never constant, and the announcements appear to be haphazardly. The company also upset PC players by asking them to create PlayStation Network accounts to access many of the games. Now Sony is looking to take a more straightforward approach, going back to console exclusives. Sony's two rivals in the console space have taken different paths. Nintendo has solely released its own Switch hardware, while Microsoft wants to do multi-platform, with the new console being doing that. Basically, that's the rumor. Another factor behind Sony's pivot may be Microsoft's next window. Oh yeah, here we go. Rumor is to use Windows and to be capable of playing PC games. Some executives at PlayStation may not be thrilled at the prospect of one of the company's flagship games like God of War running on the next Xbox console. And they're right. And Jason Schreier here is correct. But I feel like there's a lot more at stake here that needs to be talked about. Um just for my offhand, Sony, and I agree with this. Sony is making, they are in the console business. What is the goal in this console business? Oh wait, it's to sell consoles. It's not to sell just games. How can you sell a console if you have no exclusives? I understand that the people who play consoles will stay on those consoles, and people who play PC games will stay on the PC, and you don't really see that overlap. But you do see some of that overlap. I'm the example of that overlap. If PlayStation games were to release on PC day one, I would never buy a PlayStation console ever again. I just would have no reason to. for myself personally, the only reason why I even own the PlayStation is for the exclusives and to play them early before they come onto PC. And two, I think, but if the next PlayStation has no disc drive, I'm straight up not gonna get it because I will buy my single player games physically. But anyway, but that's besides the point. Um, but they understand that multiplayer games have to also still be like multi-platform. So Marathon will be multi-platform, and Marvel Token will be multi-platform, obviously, because they kind of have to be. If they were just exclusives, then they would never sell. The third thing is, if we look at the Sony games that are on PC, to you will notice a trend. The games that are on PC are but are on PS4. The only exceptions are the only exception is Returnal, Ratchet and Clank. No, wait, yeah, Ratchet and Clank, and let's just look them up, right? PS5 PC games. We can just look at them. Is this all of them? No, this is only some. Oh wait, no, here they show off all of them. We can just look at this. PS4, PS4, PS3 actually. No, PS4. PS4. Was this on PS5? Console. PS4. PS4, PS5 game. Okay, PS4. PS5. PS5. PS4, PS4. PS5. PS4, PS4. PS4, PS4, PS4. 444, 444, and that's pretty much it. Between the three games that were on the one on PS4, the three games that were only on PS5, we can look at them. This came out with hardly any marketing. I think when Spider-Man 2 released with no marketing, no announcement, no nothing, that it was dropping on PC within like 3 weeks, it was more or less done. I think that was when Sony started to like shift and saw the pattern to shift. And because when this game released, it was horrible at launch. It was so bad. It had numerous problems that still has issues, and it got hotfixed like as time went on. But when it came out, it was really bad, and it was nowhere near to the level of what PS4 Spider-Man was. I think for whatever reason, PS5 titles just have a really hard time on the PC because of the way they developed. I don't know what it is, but this had issues. This didn't have any issues from what I've heard. This was a really good port. But Returnal still has issues. And it was one of the first and earlier PS5 games to come out. This game, when it came out, and even now, even still, I can't play on PC because of the numerous problems it has. I think for whatever reason, Sony just hasn't. They don't have the Nixes who did the works on both games. They just don't have the structure for PS5 games as of right now. They got PS4 but not PS5. I think Ghost of Yotei came out to PS5. It would also still have the same problems. But then there's also on top of that, there's also this thing. When games come to PC, you because Sony wants to make as much money as they want, they have to release the games on PC because that's where most of the PC players are. And I think Sony understood that, wait, why are we giving up a 30% percentage to Steam if we could just keep it to ourselves? I think Sony will return in a few years, and when they do, they're going to make their own launcher, and they're probably going to keep the games exclusive to that. People are going to be upset, but I mean, it's their games. They deserve to do what they want with it. Hell, on top of that, Sony doesn't really have any DRM for their games. So the games that come out get pirated within a day. And it's like, and those people who were never going to buy the game, don't get me wrong, but then at the same time, it's kind of like, well, you should be supporting Sony for even like not doing that when they could have done that. But then there's also the issue of like, It's really strange. It's really, really strange because the games that, because clearly when they make these games, they don't cost much. They cost very little to make. They must be like the ports to make them is like a fraction of the main game, while also making a good reinvestment. I think what ultimately it comes down to is the fact that because Sony got a new CEO, the guy just does not want to. He does not want to follow the footsteps of what Jim Ryan did. And I think later on in life they're gonna come back to PC after a while. I think the games on PC are going to have to come out much later, so there's a bigger demand for them. But then at the same time, and here's the thing that gets me. Um, oh gosh, I had it in my head. And here's the thing that gets me. Oh, if I remember. Okay, I remembered. The biggest thing that gets me is that when these games come out, they come out years after the initial release for those games. And going back to what I said before, when Sony needs to release these games later because they want to recoup the investment. When we look at companies like Capcom, a lot of their sales come from the PC market because they are day and date releases. Whereby, let's look at Requiem for a second, Resident Evil 9. That game came out and no one wants to get spoiled on it, so people buy it day one to experience it. The problem with these games is that hey, they're story games, so the story is out there and the spoilers are out there and the marketing and the hype is all gone. You need that marketing, you need that hype. That's why these games don't sell as well. The first initial releases, I could understand why they're not doing so well. But Sony hasn't even experimented with the idea of releasing these games day one alongside a PS5. At least try it with one game and see how it goes. I understand that you're going to disrupt the PlayStation business, but the PC players aren't going to go to console, and console players aren't going to go to PC. A majority of them won't. Me myself, I will, but like those people won't do that. Um, and you should at least try it with one game. And and another problem is that when these games do come out to PC, usually they are definitive editions, and that's pretty good. But then they are also asking for like £70 the day it comes out. Like, hold on, but why? The game is £70 when the game first came out. Now you want another £70 for sometimes even for the base version of the game. What what are we doing? What do we do? Why are you just releasing the game? The marketing and everything is gone. Why are you releasing it at the same price? Why not reduce the price heavily, make it so it's more attractive to people wanting to get into it and play that game? The fact that Spider-Man 2 was what I think £50 when it came out to PC, not like 11 months after the game came out, was crazy to me. And once the game comes out, everyone has a perception of what the game already is, and unless it's really high on your list and something you really want to play, it's not. People aren't just going to want to play it. These days, there's so much content coming out, just like at a rapid pace that you have to get in there like really fast. And this just didn't what they were doing just didn't do that. I think even if it bring and that's the reason why those games didn't sell well. On PlayStation is one of those things where you appeal to a very casual market and is why those people want to play those games. But in this case, I just can't imagine the average person is going after these games. On PC, it's really weird though. On PC, people seem to be more into multiplayer games, whereas on consoles they are very much into single player games, and it's weird like that. But you still have that overlap of people who only play PC games on PlayStation and so on forth. But I mean, they're also getting ready to release the PS6 or making it, and I guess they don't want the PS6 to be compared to the PC, and they're going to release a Steam Deck version, a portable version at some point. They already teased it, announced it. Well, they kind of were teasing it. They were talking about it behind the scenes. And so I imagine if that gets announced, they don't want those games to be compete with the Steam machine. And then with Microsoft's next console, they don't want those games on the next Xbox. But then I feel like you're going to find that a lot more people are going to move to the Xbox because the library there is just going to expand and grow ever more. Because the wonderful thing about PC is being able to have such a wide backlog of games, expanding all the way back to the PS2 or like GameCube days or whatever, right? And it's just one of those things. And if it's Epic, and Microsoft working directly with Epic, dude, you're. I think Sony is going to. They have. I think Sony is going to come back to PC in a bigger and bolder way when they do return. And when they do return, they are going to take a better stance in it with a new launcher. I can't imagine they're going to keep releasing the games on PC or on Steam, and that's on them, and they deserve it. But then again, Sony did also do the whole PSN thing where you can only buy games in certain regions, and those regions being like very particular ones, so you couldn't even buy those games properly. It was so stupid. They for some reason they had Helldivers at this highest peak, and then they were like, here's Helldivers, and it's at its lowest peak because we're forcing them to do something they don't want. Like, it was so stupid. um yeah. I don't know what more to talk about. I just wanted to talk about this because I think it's really interesting. Oh, I tell you what I do. We can look at Matt Piscatella talk about it. According to Sierra's PlayStation engagement tracker, 60% of US active PlayStation 5 users played Fortnite in 25. The top Sony single player game was Marvel Spider Man 2, which ranked at 28th at 9.9. Sales of consoles were never noticeably or significantly impacted by PC releases existing, and Ghost of Yotei finishing at 11 in Traffic Full game sales of the year in the US. So can't even say that assumed non exclusivity hurt it either. And ultimately, the new shift won't really matter. Someone comments, if PlayStation couldn't get PC players to get on board PSN accounts with Helldivers, in fact, PSN accounts almost killed that game on PC until Sony backtracked. They were never going to get people into the ecosystem via PC, so imagine the thinking partly went. This reminds me something in the bonus, like Terra and the exempt comp packages that changed or something. Alright, I mean, pretty much what I was saying. What does Jason Schreier say? One piece of context here is that when someone buys a PlayStation, Sony doesn't get the 500. The company also gets 30% of everything. Basically, what I was saying with Steam. In other words, Sony makes the most money by getting as many people as possible on its consoles. This is why I never understood why Microsoft pushed to make the consoles a PC hybrid. They're undercutting the entire concept behind the Razer Blade model because they can't sell enough consoles. I mean, he's right. They had to try something to get people into the ecosystem, and if that means getting them to buy to get the consoles with a PC hybrid, then they're gonna do something. Although I have a lot of issues with Microsoft with their Play Anywhere program because it's really bad. Buying a game on PlayStation doesn't automatically mean it's coming to PC. Developers have to enable that feature, even though on Steam it's literally the same bullshit. It's really confusing to me. I don't get it. All right. Well, we'll leave it there. Yeah. All right. Take care and see ya. Oh, but hold on, wait. This is why Nintendo does so well, right? Because everything is exclusive to them. It's not like Sony can't do that. Although Nintendo has the one big thing going for them, they aren't appealing to teenagers. They're over adults. I mean, they are, but they're also appealing to the kids who then become the teenagers, who then become the adults, who then have kids, and then the cycle continues. That's why Nintendo does so well. They get them kids. They get them kids. That sounds crazy. All right, take care. See ya.